Hey, welcome everybody. It's that time of day when you're here to experience the Irrational Labs excitement, or you're really just going to learn how do you survive AI's awkward phase. Um, we were all very upset. We were all very upset that they didn't use a funny picture of Carl during his adolescence for the promo for this. Carl said they were so terrible they couldn't use 13-year-old Carl in the promo photos. He was very, very, very awful looking as a 13-year-old, but now he looks like Tom Cruise, but different. And with an Irish accent. And younger also. I mean, we should really be technical about how great Carl looks and what Tom Cruise iteration he looks like, the Irish Tom Cruise. But at any rate, we're all here. We're excited to have you here. It's our monthly thing where we talk about something exciting with someone from our team here at Irrational Labs. So, Carl, take us away to that next slide, if you wouldn't mind. So what are the ground rules? Please be on mute. We're gonna have some Q&A in a Google Doc. So the way that we do this, for those of you who've been here before, we're gonna put a link in the chat just to a Google Doc. It helps us keep an organized queue. If you have questions for Carl at about 40 minutes, we'll go to those questions and we'll just take you off of that Google Doc and we'll take it from there. Be active in chat though. We have a team here from IL and ask, discuss. Our people will jump in. You can jump in. We'll be playing along there, and we ask that you too play along as well. So, who are we? We are Irrational Labs, and we understand the psychology of your users and design products that they will use and love. And we've worked with the top players in the field. That's right. People like Walmart, Optum, Lyft, Microsoft, One Medical, PayPal, Google, Intuit, and I wanted to try and do it really fast. I didn't do it. Oh, but at any rate, we've worked with all the players with an A, Playas, whatever, play us. But if we had an origin story, which we don't because we're not superheroes, but if we did, our company started about over a decade ago building out the behavioral economics unit at Google. We went in, we worked with over 25 teams to design and test interventions at Google. Since then, we've done over 100 research studies. I mean, we've done many more, but sometimes there are NDAs that do not allow these things to go public. But you can see these at our case studies. We'll put that link in the chat. And we've trained thousands of people in the fine art of behavioral economics and behavioral design. So, again, these are some of the people we've worked with. We do work in almost every vertical. We have very interesting projects in government sustainability, but at the end of the day, big tech and consumer kind of enterprise organizations are our bread and butter, as is health tech and fintech. These tend to be the areas where we do most of our consulting work in. Before we get to AI as awkward phase, let me just tell you a little bit about Carl. He is awesome. He's one of our favorite presenters and consultants here at Irrational Labs, and he's worked on, I think, Carl, we were counting. Have you done 5 AI projects now?
That's right. Yeah, we're hitting five now.
Wow, 5. That's incredible. And then I guess we're doing a very cool AI training with a large enterprise company. That would count as 6, right?
That would. Yeah, you're right.
So I'm talking about. I knew you didn't even count that one. So, but Carl is just a passionate advocate for behavioral science, and he's a lot of fun to hang around with. Not just because he looks like an Irish Tom Cruise, but he pioneered behavioral science and Irish policymaking. He actually delivered the Irish government's first randomized controlled trial to increase attendance at job centers in Ireland and worked with their Department of Finance. He led the behavioral science team, the Sustainable Energy Authority of Ireland as their program manager, successfully delivering over 25 research projects, 5 randomized controlled trials, and co-designed decision-like aids at the SEAI's electric vehicle comparison tool. Very interesting project he did. And he's basically worked with all kinds of our top clients, and he can tell you more about that. He has a master's in behavioral science from the University of Stirling. He now lives in San Diego, where it's warm and beautiful, and he is here to show you all the genius between his ears. So, Carl, tell us about AI's awkward phase, but don't talk about your awkward phase. We don't need to know anything about your teenage years.
Thanks, Ryan. I feel like it's going to be inevitable. Just my, inbuilt awkwardness will probably come out as we go through this talk. But I'll try and keep it to a minimum. I'll try and emulate this Tom Cruise persona that you've created for me. I'll try and fit in there as best I can.
Yeah, and if you could do your own stunts, that would be preferable.
Yeah, I'm actually doing this talk from the side of a biplane as we speak.
That's what I figured. That's what I figured.
Well, thank you so much, Ryan. It's super exciting to see so many people here to talk about AI's awkward phase. We're going to jump straight into it, really. And what I'm going to present you with is some real evidence that we are in the awkward phase, right? Some true contradictions that we see play out on a daily basis for anyone here that's tried to use AI tools themselves, tried to encourage their teams to use these tools, or indeed has tried to build a product that for others to use that incorporates. I think you'll see a lot of these contradictions will ring true for you. So let's jump straight in, right? And I think first of all, I hear a lot of hype, right? We work with a lot of Silicon Valley companies, obviously, and so on. But I think it is actually true to say that AI is actually incredibly powerful. And I'll give you some evidence to back this up. You don't have to take my word for it. There are some incredible tools now, like Bash, right? And Bash is basically answering the question, what if every first product requirements document draft that you made was made with just one click, right? This is something that used to take product managers days of work to even get a first draft of, right? Collect all of your user interviews, collect a bunch of product feature documents and so on, put them all together and put them together into something comprehensive that your team can actually understand to build that product and make a reality. Bash makes this as simple as one click. You upload some of those background documents, you click start, it generates a PRD draft in less than 5 minutes. Incredible, right? Days of work down to minutes. That is truly incredible. If we look at prototyping tools like Figma Make, right, we can now write plain text like create me an analog clock. And as you're seeing in this GIF play out in real time, it will write all the code for you. It will make an actual interactive element that you can use and drag and drop straight into your working prototype of a website. Again, right, this is unlocking new abilities, really, right? If you were a product manager, for example, maybe you would have to wait for a design resource to become available to do this. Now, no longer do you need to wait. You can do this yourself. So I think it is true to say AI in a lot of ways is actually incredible and improves our ability to do things faster and unlocks new skills that we wouldn't have otherwise. At the same time, though, AI is also incredibly dumb at times, right? So I'm sure you've all had a moment like this if you've been using Google recently, and you see in the AI overview, you get just some incredible answers, right? So a silly example here, if you ask it for food names that end with you get an absolutely ridiculous result. Here's some fruit names that end with applum, bananum, strawberry, tomatum, and coconut. Interesting, right? Seems like a bit of a fail. Like maybe if my toddler came up with this, I would be impressed. But when I'm relying on a company like Google to give me accurate search results, this might undermine my confidence a bit, right? So truly in the awkward phase, can do incredible things, also does incredibly stupid things. As part of this awkward phase as well, we're feeling a lot of pressure, I'm sure, right? You've probably experienced this yourself. Your boss really wants you to use AI, right? They're saying we need to be more productive. We need to be able to unlock new skills that maybe we didn't have before. I want you to use AI in your day-to-day work. And we see this all the time, right? Shopify CEO, the NVIDIA CEO, even Duolingo CEO, all penning memos in the last couple of months saying we need to be an AI first company because if we don't, we're going to get left behind. So I want you to use AI. Great. But at the same time, again, if you're a realist like me and you've been on the ground actually trying to use AI in your day-to-day work, you've probably experienced times where your boss doesn't actually really want you to use AI, or at least doesn't want to know about it, right? And we see this play out in findings from surveys, for example. So the Financial Times reporting on a study that showed that actually a lot of people are using AI on the sly at work and not revealing when and how they're using AI as part of their work product. The Duolingo CEO that I just mentioned, couple of weeks right after he released that memo, walked back a lot of his statements and said, well, we're not going to be an AI first company. We're going to be an AI company that uses AI to enhance the human intelligence that we already have, right? And then you might say, well, where is this coming from, right? Like, why are bosses saying one thing and then doing another? And partially, I think it's coming from perceptions around people's work effort and the quality of work that's associated with AI. So there's this really nice study that's summarized by this graph on the right, that basically took a bunch of employees and asked them to complete tasks either with AI or without AI. So the kind of grayish bar is showing you the tasks without AI, and then the same tasks done with AI are shown in blue. And then they also randomly assigned people to either disclose the fact that they'd used AI or to hide the fact that they'd used AI, right? And so on the left, what we can see is, we can see very clearly when you use AI, the manager actually rates the work as much higher, right? So you can see a significant difference in their quality ratings. But what you see is when you look at the difference between the first two bars on the left and the second two bars on the right, you can see that we pay a penalty for disclosing when we use AI, right? When we actually say, I did actually use AI to make this, the managers rated that same work product as being lower quality. So there are some real contradictions here in terms of they do want you to use it, maybe they don't want you to tell them because they perceive it as lower quality as a result. AI can really increase the value of your work, right? Whether it's productivity or your actual abilities to do new things. So there's plenty of studies now showing that AI boosts productivity across a wide range of industries, right? So whether you're in call centers, 34% increases, whether you're a developer, 56% increase in task completion, whether you're a management consultant, kind of like myself, or whether you're a professor, all of these groups have benefited from the productivity gains from AI. But you're probably seeing a repeating theme in how I'm presenting these slides. At the same time, we do see that AI can actually decrease the value of your work, right? So a different study looking at widespread use of AI chatbots across 7,000 different workplaces finds no significant impact on earnings or recorded hours in any occupation, right? How can these both be true? How can we be in such an awkward phase where I can tell you on one hand that you're going to see these big productivity increases, and then we see a headline like this? I think a little bit of a spoiler for the rest of the talk here is that the implementation really, really matters, right? How we tell people to use AI, the incentives we create around it, the way that your staff actually use AI on a day-to-day basis, and how you design your product really, really matters, right? These small little frictions can get in the way, particularly because we're in this messy middle, in this awkward phase. That is getting the design right and getting the incentive and the kind of supporting structures right is absolutely critical. All right, so let me give you another example of how AI can make you more productive. This time, really nice study looking at real consultants from Boston Consulting Group. They randomly assigned these consultants to either complete tasks with generative AI or without generative AI. And they did this for a bunch of different tasks, for writing code for data cleaning, for predictive analytics, or for statistical understanding. Across all these tasks, they were much more effective in creating work product that people rated highly when they used generative AI tools. At the same time, again, maybe not a shocker given my format here, AI can actually make you less productive too, right? A study that was done by Meter recently took a bunch of developers who had about 5 years on average experience doing open source development. And they said, look, we're going to give you a coding assistant, an AI coding assistant, and I want you to predict what's going to happen to your own productivity. Do you think you're going to get faster at these tasks that we're going to give you? Or do you think you'll get slower? And everyone they asked said, well, these developers are going to get faster, right? Economists said they get faster. Machine learning experts said they get faster. They asked the developers before they started the task, do you think it'll be faster? They said yes. They said after the task, do you think you were faster? They said yes. And then when they actually measured their actual performance on the task, they got slower, right? What is going on here? Like, how is this so awkward? How is this so messy? Well, again, the implementation matters, right? What they found was a lot of developers were actually basically sitting, waiting, watching this AI do some work for them rather than taking that time back to complete the next task, for example. And so again, the implementation really, really matters. So I think it's fair to say we really are in AI's awkward phase. And my goal today is to obviously, one, convince you of that, but then give you some real practical tips for how we can survive this awkward phase. And why should you trust me? Like, why should you take advice from me? Ryan promised you that he wished we had some embarrassing photos of me. I'm now going to deliver on that promise, right? We'll skip on here a little bit. And what you'll see is that AI is truly in its awkward phase in the same way that I was in this lovely picture of me as a teenager. Here I am with my sister in my parents' sitting room.
Wait, but wait. Is your sister in a witness protection program?
She is. She is. That's what's truly awkward about this photo. And so you can see here's my awesome Tony Hawk t-shirt, right? My awesome Tony Hawk ramp. And I'm here to say that I think I did okay, right? I think I came out the other side, right? Maybe like 5% better dressed than I was back then. So if I can survive this awkward phase, we can all survive AI's truly awkward phase together. And I'm going to give you some tips for how we can do that. So I think why we're in an awkward phase with AI right now is because, just like I was when I was 12 or 13, AI is going through some serious growing pains. And that's actually no joke. I was tall for my age, and the growing pains were real, let me tell you. And they are real for AI as well. And if you look at some interesting survey results, 77% of employees are lost on how to use AI in their careers, right? They're telling people consistently across different surveys, I just don't know how I'm supposed to use these tools. And you might say, okay, fine, people are lost, but like, why do I really care about that? Like, why does that really matter? And why it really matters is it creates a large intention action gap, right? Where a bunch of people say and agree in surveys, I think AI would help me do my job. I would actually like to use AI more in my job. But then when you ask them, well, are you doing that? Like, are you using it regularly on a daily or weekly basis? No, not as often, right? You see this big gap from 68% of people saying, I think it would help, to only 37% of people actually using it in practice. This is what happens when we're in this awkward phase and we're going through these growing pains, right? It creates a large intention action gap. And so I think what we need to understand is, well, what are the behavioral barriers that are getting in the way, that are creating this awkward phase, creating these growing pains, so that people can understand them, so that we can understand them, so that we can design our products better, so that our users don't have to deal with as much of this messy middle, so we can make better products. I think where this is coming from is partly to do with people's mental model of how AI tools work. And a really nice framing device for this comes from Ethan Mollick, an expert on AI and AI development and how it's used in organizations. And he talks about this concept of the jagged frontier, which is this idea that basically, look, sometimes AI is absolutely brilliant and sometimes it misses. And we've already looked at some examples of that, right? And so for tasks that are inside the frontier, AI will actually nail it. But there are some other very simple tasks that we would find easy that AI actually finds very difficult, and this is outside the frontier. And I think sometimes the problem is that we, our teams, and even our users have the wrong mental model of how AI operates. I think we often treat it like a calculator, that it's deterministic, right? We give it an output, 2 plus 2, the answer should always be 4, but it's actually not like that. It's more like a creative intern. AI is generative, right? It creates a new answer every time that you prompt it. And so you need to kind of have yourself, your teams, and your products reflect this real mental model, right? If we're going to navigate these growing pains, we have to understand that in reality, AI is more like a creative intern. It's generative, and we need to accept that there are going to be some tasks it's amazing at, and sometimes it's going to miss. So I'll give you another example of this here. And what I want to hear about in the chat while I'm explaining these examples is, what's your funniest AI fail, right? Like, for example, recently, you could ask Google LM Notebook, like, analyze Microsoft's latest earnings report and make me a podcast about it. And it will do that no problem in 5 minutes and give you an incredibly detailed podcast about Microsoft's earnings report, right? Whether you want to listen to it is another thing. But it does this, and this would take humans like 3 or 4 days to make, right? And a podcast studio and all of this, it does it in seconds or minutes. Same time, if you ask AI, look, how many R's are there in the word strawberry? Sometimes it will get this question wrong. And so what is your funniest AI fail? I'd like to see some answers in the chat, and we can share a brief moment of levity before we jump into the barriers and solutions. Anyone want to share some really funny AI fails? Let's see. Channing, I got into a fight with AI about what kind of grass I had. Okay, yeah, definitely in the awkward phase, right? Mike, I went through 12 rounds of asking it to not use M dashes after having it to identify using M dashes, and it could never stop using M dashes. Yeah, I think that would drive us all a little crazy. Sharon, it thinks I'm a man with a rowing machine in my living room. Okay, we'll have to unpack that one later on in the Q&A for sure. That's interesting. Juan, an AI identified a beetle as an ant. Yeah, okay, great. These are all lovely examples, right? You ask it things that should be super obvious to it, and it just really struggles and fails. And I think baking that in to your mental model, your team's mental model, and your user's mental model through design is very important to make sure that we get the best out of AI and not the worst. So what are these growing pains? Let's talk about a few of them. These are the 4: choice overload, ambiguity aversion, verification tax, and social stigma. And don't worry, we're going to go through each one by one, and then I'll give you a solution to each as well. And we'll have plenty of time to discuss them in the chat and in the Q&A as well. So choice overload basically comes from the fact that there really are thousands of AI tools out there, with more coming every single day, right? This is partially because of the hype cycle that we're in right now. There's so much funding just pouring into this industry that everyone has the incentive to create this new best tool. And also partially because these tools are actually progressing so rapidly. Every 2 to 3 months, we see these big jumps in terms of how good they are at doing things, or even what they're able to do, right? And so it's very tempting for us to live at this bleeding edge and say, let's try and stay right at the edge of this frontier all the time. But you can imagine that if you're trying to do that, right, if you're trying to live right on the edge of the frontier, you're going to fall off the edge a lot more often too, right? And so this can be a real problem. right? We hear people saying things like, look, a new AI writing assistant just launched. Should I switch to that? Like, what about the one that I was using last week? Am I falling behind if I don't try them all? These are all totally normal feelings that people have, and it's all a result of this choice overload. And we'll give you some strategies for dealing with that in just a few minutes. Ambiguity inversion. And what does it have to do with randomly colored balls in a bag? Well, let me tell you. There's a very nice famous example in probability and in behavioral economics called the Ellsberg paradox. And it basically goes something like this. If you ask people, look, I'll give you a prize if you choose an orange ball out of this bag. You have two options of bags. You can choose the bag on the left, right? 50% of the balls are orange, 50% are blue. Or you can have the mystery bag where I don't disclose how many of those balls are orange and how many are blue. Who wants the mystery bag and who wants the bag that's open and showing? Give me some answers in the chat here. Open or mystery? Let me count up some answers. Open bag, open bag, open bag, open bag, open. Yeah, everyone going for open. Shona, okay, coming in with the mystery. I like it. Okay, we have a risk taker in here. I like it. Open unless bored. Nice. Yeah, absolutely. Maybe you want a bit more excitement in your life and you go for the mystery bag. Okay, give me the mystery bag, says Ryan. Okay, we'll give you a mystery bag afterwards, Ryan, just as a thank you for putting this talk together and helping me out.
Thanks, Carl.
You're welcome. What you see.
I hope that your sister's head isn't in it.
Me too. Me too. And so what you see consistently in studies that have been replicated numerous times is that people go for this 50% open bag pretty much all the time, right? People overwhelmingly prefer certainty. Why is that, right? There's a good chance that the mystery bag is actually 100% full of oranges. It could be 99%, 98%. You get the point, right? But we don't know. And that's the problem, right? We are averse to ambiguity. And the same thing comes when we're using AI. We don't know, for example, can the AI actually do this task, right? Is it on the frontier? Is it inside the frontier? Is it past the frontier? You don't know until you try. And also, we don't know how long it's going to take, right? So I'm going to ask the AI for help with this. Is it going to take 30 seconds, 3 minutes, 3 hours? I don't know, particularly when you use big reasoning models, right? We don't get an accurate time estimate for how long it's going to think for. And if you think about, if you're in a real work task situation where you know you have to have something done by 3 o'clock, the option that's more certain might be more appealing to you. Yeah, it might be great if AI can do it in 3 minutes, but you know that you can do it in half an hour. And you being able to be certain about the fact that you can do it is maybe more important than dealing with going back and forth in AI and dealing with that level of uncertainty. And so this is why this is such an important concept to get right. There's also the verification tax, right? So when you post on social media, you pay the cat or the dog tax, right? You must show a cute picture of your cat or your dog. Equally, when you use AI, you must pay the verification tax. So when you use AI, right, it can be confidently and subtly wrong. And so you need to check its work. And there's a nice example of this from a study looking at the number of cases that are actually going through the real legal system right now, and how many hallucinations we're seeing this. And this is basically the number of legal cases that are including AI-generated false information. And worryingly, for anyone who here has a court case, hopefully no one, you can see that actually the number of hallucinations is increasing over time as more and more people use AI. And so you could say, right, look, great, the AI wrote it, but now I have to spend the next 20 minutes making sure it didn't make some obvious or stupid mistake, right? And we'll give you some tips for how to deal with that so that you can actually use AI and get some of the productivity wins without having to worry so much about these hallucinations. And finally, we talked a little bit about this at the top of the call, right? Social stigma is there and it is real. There are numerous studies documenting this effect right now. And so what you can see on the right is a graph basically when we look at people who use AI and disclose that fact versus people who don't use AI or don't disclose that fact. People who are disclosing that they're using AI are perceived as more lazy, more replaceable, less competent, less diligent, right? And they're therefore less likely to want to disclose it to their manager or even to their colleagues. And so there is this real social stigma, right? About, okay, maybe I'm using AI, but do I want to tell everyone? And again, we'll give you some tips for navigating this awkward phase in just a minute. Okay, so let's jump in. Let's give you some of the survival tips, the survival guide for being inside the frontier, right? So let's put ourselves in the mind of the best Bear Grylls episode we've ever seen and try and take some survival tips that Bear even will be proud of. I'm going to give you 4. So for one for each. So for choice overload, right, you're feeling you can't keep up with all the new tools. The solution here is to try and choose your core 3 tools, and I'll expand on that in just a second. For ambiguity version, for the fact that you think, oh, look, I just don't know if it's going to work or how long it's going to take, giving your AI a very specific and concrete goal can really help with this. For the verification task, where you feel like you're going to have to check everything anyway, we can create checkpoints so that we can actually check things as we go rather than waiting for one huge output that we have to check at the end. And with social stigma, really the answer here is to own your outputs and by meaningfully contributing to the work yourself. And I'll give you some tips around doing that too. Okay, so let's go one by one here. So if you're dealing with choice overload, if you're trying to survive the choice overload of the thousands of tools that are out there and the new ones that are coming out every day, there's a couple of things you want to do. You basically want to identify 3 core AI tools. You want to have a tool that listens to you and takes notes for you, right? So this is what we call like a capture tool. Basically, the idea here is you should never have to take notes again. Here are 5 or 6 different tools that all do this. And our favorite is Fireflies. So we're giving you a recommendation here to try and cut down on some of this choice overload. You want to have a collaboration partner AI too, right? Someone who's going to do it with you. And this is going to be your partner for tasks where you say things like, I need to think this through. I need to get help or critical feedback on my ideas. Our favorite here is ChatGPT. And as well, you want to have an AI for creating materials, right? So where you actually do want the AI to kind of do it for you. So I need this thing done. And a lot of time this is for prototypes. Again, our favorite is Figma Make, and that's because it's baked in so well into your existing design tool where you already are, reducing some of that friction of taking the output and actually making meaningful changes and putting it into real work products. So again, the kind of survival tip here is don't try and keep up with the leading edge. Don't try and overwhelm yourself by choosing every new tool that comes out. Instead, pick 3 core AI tools and invest in those and build up your skill set so you feel confident using those tools. And I promise you, these tools even themselves are so dynamic and diverse that it's not going to hamstring your ability to do things. You're going to be able to do a lot with just 3 tools. All right, we talked about the problem of trying to survive ambiguity, right? And this is like being in the forest without a good map. You want a map, and so does the AI actually, right? The AI actually will benefit from giving it a very clear goal. And you want to think about yourself, what is the goal? Is your goal to be in explore mode, or is your goal to be in refine mode? When you're in explore mode, you want to tell the AI, look, what we're trying to do here is come up with a bunch of ideas. So you might want to say things like, let's brainstorm 5 unconventional ways we could market this feature, right? Give specific numbers. Don't just say brainstorm unconventional ways, because then you have no idea, is it going to generate 1 idea? Is it going to generate 100 ideas, right? If you give it very concrete goals and say, look, actually brainstorm 5 unconventional ways, that will narrow down its scope and still give you some options to choose from. And that's a good thing. If we're in the refine stage of our work, right, and we want to actually get a high quality output that matches like a good example that we already have. So for example, you're working on a product requirements document or something like that, right? Or maybe a LinkedIn post. What you want to do is give the AI a lot of context. You say, here's our best performing LinkedIn post from last month, right? Using this exact structure and tone, write a new post with customer endorsements of our new feature. And here what you're doing is you're giving the AI a role. You're telling it, look, I want you to do this as an expert marketer. You're giving it rules, like use this example and follow the structure and tone. And you're giving it the raw materials. You're giving it a context. So here is the best performing LinkedIn post, right? And you're attaching it. Again, this is narrowing in on the goal and will stop the kind of weird things happening where AI will just go off in a totally random direction. Instead, it will focus much more on your context and give you the type of output that you're looking for if you're more specific in giving a goal upfront. Surviving the verification tax. This is a big one, right? I think this one is something I still struggle to, even though I use AI daily in my work and work on a lot of AI projects. I do find myself sometimes wondering, oh, geez, like, is this right? Like, maybe I need to spend even more time trying to figure out and make sure that AI is telling me something that's right and truthful here. There's a way to do this, though, I think that definitely can help everyone, which is called the checkpoint method. So I think a lot of people fall into what we're calling the one-shot trap, right? You basically say, you know what, I'm just going to come up with an awesome prompt. I'm going to slam it into ChatGPT. It's going to be a prompt that's like 600 words long. It's going to give me the answer right the first time. Awesome, let's rock and roll. That's actually not really the best way to go about things. Because one, you're going to end up trying to write an absolutely massive prompt and taking up a lot of your own time. 2, you're going to ask ChatGPT to do a lot, or your tool of choice to do a lot of work before you get to check any of it. And 3, you sometimes also forget steps, right? When you try to write these really long, complicated prompts. So instead, what's more effective is actually use AI to help you iterate through each of the key kind of decision checkpoints and check its work along the way. So first say, okay, look, if we're going to build a research report on AI tools, why don't you generate a detailed outline for a 10-page market analysis report for me? It will build a skeleton, and then you can check and say, does the skeleton look right? Is the main kind of section headers here that I want, the main areas that I wanted to research, are they all included? If they're not, I can iterate a little bit here. I can change it, or if it looks good to go, I can move on to step 2. And then you can say, okay, let's go into a bit more detail on one section. Let's jump in and write the competitor analysis section based on public data. AI will give you its output. And again, you only have to review now a little bit of content, right? It's coming back with one section, you verify that, and then you keep going. And this, I think, is a much more productive way to move through your task, is ask it to kind of chunk your work up and give you each output and check it as you go. And that way, you know, okay, it's getting this right. It's getting this right. Oh, I might need to make a little tweak, rather than having to wait for it to put out everything and then having to read a 20-page document whereby pages 12 through 18 are all a mishmash of nonsense because you didn't check it before you started running the prompts. All right. The last one, maybe one of the more complicated ones, right? Surviving social stigma. Like we talked about, there are studies showing you that your boss wants you to use AI, but will also perceive your work as lower quality if you do. There's studies showing that people are using AI, but they're using it on the sly. So what should you do here? I think our advice here is to really earn your ownership, right? So you should own your work product. It should be yours, and you should stand up in front of people and say, yes, this is my work. But to do so, you should earn that right to be able to do that, right? So instead of using AI as like a one-shot prompting where you say, hey, do my task for me, use it as a sparring partner, right? Say, okay, yeah, you gave me back some ideas, but this idea is not that great. Option 2 is unrealistic or not feasible for us. So tweak that and find a more practical idea. Option 3 is not actually detailed enough. Give me some more detail, right? You should invest and put in some intellectual effort in this sparring session to make sure that that idea is truly yours. It's going to, 1, allow you to truly stand up and say, yes, I built this because you did. And 2, it's going to actually help you build better ideas in the first place, right? Because you're going to be critiquing and working as a sparring partner with your AI rather than just taking its first output as gospel. I think you do then want to stand behind your work. So when you present that work, stand behind it with full confidence. It is your work. Unless your workplace has a definitive policy about you must disclose when you use AI, you can just present it as your work, right? We use lots of tools to do our work. When you use Excel, for example, right? Hands up who uses autofill in Excel, right? Yeah, you don't stand up and say, well, I didn't actually write all the formulas. Like Excel actually autofilled half the formulas for me. You don't need to always disclose all of these things, particularly if you're doing the work and if you're verifying it yourself, right? You can stand behind your own work. And this is a really nice tip as well around taking a cooling off period. And this comes from a theory in behavioral science, is that the idea that we can be in a hot state and a cold state. In a hot state, like when we're really busy and we're trying to get something done for a deadline, right? We can kind of feel emotional. We can kind of be very nervous and anxious and say, oh, I just need this thing done. I need it done. It needs to be done right now. And that's not maybe the best time to review the output that your AI spit out at you, right? Because you're just trying to fly through a bunch of work. And instead, it will actually benefit you to take a little bit of a cooling off period, even if it's small, even if it's getting up from your desk, making yourself a cup of coffee, and then coming back and reading the output and saying, okay, does this seem like it makes sense? The tip here is just don't copy, paste, and send. Instead, get yourself a little bit of a fresh eyes by walking away, having a coffee, whatever it is that you need to do, and then come back and edit, refine, and add your own unique voice to it. And that, again, will allow you to stand up and confidently own this work. Okay, so I think it's fair to say, right, that you can survive this awkward phase. It's real, it's messy, just like that picture of me. It's kind of awkward, right? But you can do this, you can survive it, right? If we actually take this as a behavioral challenge, not just a technical problem, if we think about and build the right mental model, the AI is this generative tool. We expect to have to experiment, go back, go forth, go back, go forth, right? And if we take into account these different barriers and some of the tips that we've given you, I think we can survive through it by building our tools to account for these factors, by having our own process and mindset reflect the reality and not kind of the end state that we wish was true, which was that AI was just perfect. It isn't, and it won't be for a while. I think we can all navigate this messy middle a little bit better and come out ahead. So thank you very much for your attention. I really, really appreciate it. We're going to have some more super cool resources around a couple of different areas here around AI survival guide for your career, which is going to help you increase your productivity, a survival guide for team leaders who want to build an AI ready culture, and a survival guide for product leaders who want to design their AI for adoption. These are all some fun links that we'll be sharing and sending out very soon. So please do subscribe to our newsletter. But I'll pause here. I'll hand it over to Ryan to do some fabulous, wonderful, non-awkward emceeing, and we'll jump to some questions.
Thank you so much. If everybody could give Karl some love, I have to say I was on vacation, so I just got back into the flow. This is my first time looking at the deck, and wow, like what a great presentation. So if you give Karl some love in the chat, let him know you appreciated it. And it wasn't awkward at all, Karl. It was genius. And I really love this robot Boy Scout. He is super sci-fi in the most 1950s way. It's incredible. And I also, this whole survival thing is getting really intense. I do feel a little Bear Grylls and Naked and Afraid about the robots. Like it's a weird combo. And I'm worried that I need all these survival guides right now to go get on Claude or I'll get killed. Um, that said, now that my life is in Pearl, we do have a lot of very fun questions. So, Anna, are you around? Could you come on, Mike?
Yes. Hello. How's it going?
Oh my gosh, I am going well. I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Great. Sorry I'm off camera, but I am here in this space.
I know I'm busy
Um,
looking for you. I'm like trying to find you on
yes,
my
yes.
Zoom.
No, no, no. I'm off camera today. Carl, thanks for your presentation. I think my question was about one of the early factoids you shared about like the productivity. Just looking for like a source or if there's additional white paper on that one that you can share, that would be helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. So there was a couple of them on the slide, so I'll jump back for you just so you can see them, but we'll also send them to you afterwards. Yeah, so there's a bunch of studies you can look at. So some of the names
Oh,
here,
great.
Brynjolfsson and Raymond, Peng and Chihan, Summers and Noy and Zhang. These are all some great papers, and we'll share them afterwards.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we should be
Absolutely.
able to put some of those in the chat. Rosie, if you could grab some of those, that would be really awesome. Channing, you're a ringer. You asked a bunch of questions, but I think you're synthesizing a bunch of things that are going on in the chat. So would you mind coming on and just asking kind of, I think these are about what's going on in the chat.
No, I had a question. I think you marked what you think IL's favorite tools are, but what are your favorite tools? And then give us both because I also know you're sitting a little bit more on the frontier than you're telling all of us. What are some of the frontier tools that you enjoy?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think a real practical one that's not like too frontiery, but that everyone could benefit from really is Google LM Notebook. So everyone probably knows Google's flagship model, which is Google Gemini. They've built a kind of improved version of Gemini called LM Notebook, which specifically is very good at two things. One, extracting information from documents, which is just like a key thing, but that a lot of AI models get really wrong. So it's really good at doing basic, if you say, here's a bunch of documents, find me statistics that show me that sales are increasing, for example. It will find accurate data points from your documents, and it will tell you, here's where I found them. Huge for knowledge management, huge for onboarding to projects quickly, which we do a lot. Also, it does this really nice feature that I kind of jokingly referred to earlier on, which is about creating summary podcasts. So I read a lot of research papers, but also I have a young toddler right now. So my reading time is rapidly decreasing. And so now I need to listen to more research summaries. And so I use LM Notebook to create podcast summaries of really technical papers that I can listen to like when I'm running and stuff like that, which is super helpful. And then like frontier tools, I think Google AI Studio is really nice. A lot of really interesting kind of experimental features that are coming out from Google. Also, a new product that just released basically yesterday or the day before. OpenAI have released study mode. So a big complaint about using like ChatGPT for study is that it will just give you the answer, right? Kind of undermining the point of learning. Study mode is kind of more gives you the Socratic method. It goes back and forth with you and kind of refuses to give you the answer until you demonstrate that you have the knowledge required to get there. And so these are some really new cutting edge tools that I would suggest playing around with, particularly if you've got like either kids that are learning or if you yourself are trying to upskill on something. The new Google Study, or sorry, OpenAI Study Mode is real nice.
Awesome. Thank you, Carl, and thank you, Channing. Lan, you have kind of an IP question, so this is interesting. Lan, are you out there?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, go ahead and ask your question. I'm interested to hear what our stand is on this. So go ahead.
Yes. So I am part of a public-private partnership led by the city of San Jose. And a group of us are helping curating or providing some playbooks so that the member governments and civic partners could have some ready to plug and play materials for upskilling, training their own staff. And so some of the materials, I'm thinking we're building up a kind of a library of slides so people can pick and choose whatever fits their needs. So some of yours are great, I think, and want to ask if we could, with reference to your organization and materials, of course, whether we can reference yours and copy them.
Sure. I think this the whole recording of this talk is going to be shared in the chat. So yeah, absolutely. And talk to us maybe in the chat afterwards about like attribution and all that. But I'm sure we can work something out, man. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I would say reach out, and additionally, once these guides drop, those will be available as well. So just, good citation practices. So awesome. Aaron in Kansas. You're not in Kansas anymore. Come on. Are you around? Uh-oh. Did Aaron drop? This always happens. One person vanishes.
No, I'm here. I
Oh,
just
cool.
took a minute to get my audio back on.
No, that's okay. You want to have the best sound possible. Do ask your question.
So my question is, someone on the call is using Otter, and I've never seen it before. It looks awesome, but you guys recommend Fireflies as your top choice. What is the difference between the two, or main difference, and why do you choose Fireflies?
Yeah, okay. Well, actually, Seren, who's on our call here, actually uses Otter still. So maybe I can give you both perspectives. I'll give you mine why I like Fireflies, and Seren can tell you why she likes Otter. So I like Fireflies because the transcripting is very, very good. It's very, very accurate. It allows you to listen on triple speed, which is super important when you're busy, which I really appreciate. And I just find it to be overall a lot easier in terms of like sharing links and so on. So when I want to share like the transcripts with my colleagues for like a client call and stuff like that, it's just much easier. But Seren, do you want to come off mute and give your pitch for Otter?
Yes, I do. I like Otter as a delinquent of Irrational Labs because it actually takes screenshots of the screens. And so you can see as you go the moment that you're referencing, not just by the transcript, but also the visual. So that's the reason I like it more.
I did
Thanks, Seren.
notice that, so that I thought that was really great. Thank you both.
Absolutely.
No, this was also critical because, as I said in the chat, this is how Carl outed himself as a bot. He's like, oh, I like to listen at 3x, but it's actually like 10x because he's just AI and that's what we use him for. We let him out today. He's very human-like, though, isn't he? So, our next question, Erwin, are you around and where are you coming to us from?
I am. I'm calling from Los Angeles. My question is kind of a two-part question. Part one is, um, a lot of people don't have any familiarity or have minimal familiarity with AI. They play with it. They don't have business uses for it. And so when you look at people's attitudes, what happens is they become more familiar and use it to solve problems. How do their attitudes shift as a result?
Yeah, great question. So we have actually looked at a couple of studies on this, and you do see that like once basically people start to use it, they become more accepting of it. So like, for example, there's a bunch of public opinion polling that shows that like people think AI is really dangerous for society. They're scared that it's going to be kind of unleashed on us in negative ways. And you see that people's attitudes like that actually change towards more positive the more that they use AI. Now, some of that might be like selection effects and so on, but some of it I think is being driven by the fact that once you use it and get an experience of what it's like, you start to actually see that, yes, it's very competent at certain things and very competent at other things. And I think that kind of the main implication of all of this is that a lot of training focuses on, let's sit in a classroom together and learn about AI and like learn good techniques for prompting. And the type of training that we actually advocate for and that we are actually running with some large enterprise clients right now is no, get in a room and do real tasks over and over and over again with these AI tools so that you get practical hands-on experience. Because one, these tools are not like traditional software. You can't say like, here's how to use Excel, click this menu, then click that. It's really about learning the experimentation mindset. And two, getting in and going in, kind of rolling around in the dirt a little bit with AI and understanding what it's good at and what it's not is only capable if you actually sit down and try and use the tool. So I think what I'm really saying is moving away from classroom type teaching and moving into like practical, giving people like dedicated experiment time with support, obviously from a mentor, is a much more effective way of learning, we think.
Doesn't that imply that managers really need training before they give the employees tasks so they know what to give them?
Woo! Hoo-hoo!
So isn't that always the case, Erwin?
Thank you.
Erwin, that was all net. It was just it was LA Lakers moment there. It was just a Thank you. Yeah, very, very cool. I did just put a note in the chat to everybody. If you asked a question, I do need to know who you are so I can call on you. So for that reason, a friend of Irrational Labs, Shay, gets the next question because he is labeled. And then I'll go back to the other questions. So do make sure you put your name in there and bold them so I know who's asking the questions. But Shay, how are you? Coming to us from Atlanta.
Hey, nice to see you all. Super nice to
Great
see
to
you,
see you,
Carl.
man.
Good to
Nice to see you,
Yeah.
Ryan. Everyone.
Yeah. So hit us up with your genius question.
Hey there, Carl. I've been seeing a lot of LinkedIn attention around this concept of an AI co-pilot that essentially like takes your past prompts, maybe takes some like data that you have or forms context that you can feed in, and kind of continues to use that and build it up as a means of collaboration and creation. I was curious if you have one, and if so, what that setup looks like for you.
Yeah, and you mean so kind of like the way that OpenAI and ChatGPT will keep like a memory and a context of previous conversations, right, and build this up over time. Yeah, I think there are two kind of schools of thought on this. There's like the bake this into the product itself, which is the way the ChatGPT has gone, right? So that like basically every time you prompt ChatGPT and every time that you give it more context, it's keeping at least some essence of that in its memory for some period of time. And so that's helpful, for example, when you jump from one chat to another and you say, oh, by the way, that thing I told you last week, can you reference that here? It can also be dangerous because sometimes you actually want it to start without any kind of background or context. You want to say, I want like an unbiased answer about this particular topic. And so you can go in and you can delete your memory in a lot of these tools. And then you're right, some people are actually using like explicit tools for collecting like context documents, prompts, and so on. And I think that is a personal preference thing. I think like if you're a power user, you probably do want to do that. You probably want to have some tool or repository where you're building up your prompts and your context documents over time, particularly for routine tasks. But like I said, sometimes you very much don't want the tool to have the context. And so it's about opting in and out as per your task demands, I think.
Oh, that's really interesting. Thank you.
Absolutely. Good to see you.
Yeah, and it's also Claude is obviously the opposite of that, right? So everything on Claude is walled off by design, so it's not scooping from other chats. And I think it's always a trade-off, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Yeah, because sometimes you really want to start fresh, and sometimes the context is very valuable. So, awesome. Okay, Sharon in Seattle. Sharon, is that a double question from you? Are you actually 8 and 9 on the sheet?
Well, you know what? I'm going to let somebody else take the question after it. But this is a common question. It relates to, by the way, Carl, excellent presentation.
Look at your manners, Sharon.
No, really good. Really enjoyed this.
Thanks.
So a lot of people have this question, using AI as a sparring partner. It's a best practice for checking your work in a way. But I also found that as a sparring partner, you can eventually create these circular arguments, and that they can be that annoying person that will equally argue the other point of view and not hold to their previous point of view. You have, with a series of prompts, you can kind of upend your original work completely. And so do you have, and a lot of junior people don't have another way to fact check their work. They're not subject matter experts. So what advice would you give on optimizing the use of AI as a sparring partner?
Great question. Yeah, I mean, it also comes back to just like how do people take feedback in general? And like, you know, I think a very famous saying that I like about feedback is like, feedback is data, and it's data that you can either follow or not follow, right? And so I think like, as you say, part of becoming like an experienced, you know, person in any field is trying to learn that is like, when do I need to listen to feedback? Like, when are people telling me something I actually need to change my behavior? And when are people telling me something that, you know what, actually, I don't need to listen sometimes. So sometimes actually you should just be using your own judgment and saying, you know what, great, it tells me I'm wrong about this, but I know better, I'm right. When you don't have that subject matter expertise, you can basically set stopping rules. So I was using AI for practicing for basically like a debate I knew I was going to have with a friend over a few beers. And I wanted to be right on this particular one. And so I basically told ChatGPT, I want you to take the opposite position to me. I want you to argue your point. We're going to have about 5 to 6 rounds. Your arguments should be X length, should have this type of supporting evidence. And at this point, and then at the end, we're going to ask a different AI to act as an independent judge. And that's a really effective way that I've found to do it, is basically set the terms of the debate, have that debate with the AI, and then have another AI come in and act as an independent judge and score and say who won.
Oh, fantastic. I love that. Thank you.
Absolutely.
I also think that's an interesting road that you're going down there, Sharon. I do wonder, and I've had this conversation with a lot of people, and Karl, it would be great for you to weigh in, but I do think people are kind of getting fed a bill of goods here in that subject matter expertise is absolutely critical. And I
Totally.
think people are starting to believe like, oh, AI will do everything, when in actuality, we're spending so much time checking it and verifying it, right?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So I'll give you a really concrete example actually from like a project that we were doing recently where I was using AI. So we had to do a bunch of statistical analysis to examine the results of an experiment that we had run. And you could try doing this a couple of ways, right? So you could ask ChatGPT or similar, you could say, let's one-shot this, like do the analysis for me, right? Now that, in my view, would be almost kind of crazy. Because it makes certain assumptions. It doesn't have all the context that you, even when you give it specific context and say, here's my data file, here's how we ran the experiment, right? There's one, going to be stuff that you leave out. And two, there's always assumptions that you have to make in any piece of data analysis. And AI doesn't know which one it should make. It just picks one and goes with it. And so, for example, it might suggest like a statistical test that you know is absolute rubbish, you shouldn't be using. And the real kind of practical way to get around this is to be a lot more concrete with your asks. So when I was doing the statistical analysis, instead of saying, hey, do this analysis for me, what I'd say is, I need a piece of code to build a graph that looks like this with X, Y, and Z in the graph. Can you give me that? AI is great at that. It's a really specific, concrete thing that it's seen many instances of in its training data, and it doesn't need to make any judgments, right? It just needs to give you code to create a graph. So being specific, chunking your work out, I think is very important. And then also, again, verifying and checking it with your own expertise, definitely still important.
Yeah, yeah. And I do think there are some people entering the workspace that are like, oh, cool, I can just check everything with AI. And I will tell you, my wife was gone for 3 days and I wanted to make asparagus. And I asked ChatGPT how to do that. And it was awful. ChatGPT told me, for those of you that can cook asparagus, it told me to blanch it for like 9 minutes. It was like asparagus soup. My wife comes home. She's like, you only cook it for 3 minutes. I'm like, but ChatGPT told me. She's like, well, ChatGPT's a moron. And so are you, honey. And I said, I know.
At
So
least you had
that,
the humility to say you knew.
I know. Here, I let the bot overlords try and cook with me. Who am I? Who am I? Oh my gosh, your parents used to microwave asparagus. We do have an unnamed question about the hallucinations. Who is asking the hallucinations question? Okay. if we don't have any takers, I'll just read it. Somebody said, I'm struggling with accepting the hallucinations as part of the process. If I have a calculator that gives me the wrong answer, it makes me skeptical of using the calculator. That would be funny, by the way. I like the idea of checkpoints. Can you touch more on other ways to navigate trust in this type of process? And are there points where you stop using AI if it has a lot of hallucinations?
Yes.
Basically, is your LLM a drug addict?
Yeah, exactly. Let's go euphoria on this one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're actually right. There are times where, like, we talked about the jagged frontier, right? Tasks it's good at, tasks it's bad at. If you start to realize actually AI or this particular instance of AI that I'm using is very bad at this task, you may well be right to just stop using it and just go back to manual, good old-fashioned human thinking. I think that's totally one thing you can do. Some other things that you can do before kind of totally abandoning it is ask for sources and check them. So ChatGPT in particular has gotten better at this recently, where you say, look, do some research, tell me about this, like, tell me about competitors in this industry and give me links. The links are more often than not actually real now. Before it used to make up stuff a lot. And part of this is also they have you can basically actually see like a preview of the website that it's on. So when it links you to the Financial Times, for example, you can hover on the link and see that it is actually pointing you to a real Financial Times article, which is super helpful. So there's that. There's also, you know, we have multiple AI models. They all have slightly different training data sets and so on. And so using different models to answer the same task, if they're all giving you the same answer, maybe you're a little bit more confident that they're right. There's a couple of ways of doing this. And then one thing I will say is, look, hallucinations are a real problem, but I wouldn't over despair about this either. Like when you look at benchmark tests that tests AI's capabilities on answers or on questions that have objective answers, they actually are getting better and better all the time, right? So yes, check for hallucinations, but they are getting better and better over time.
That's brilliant. Well, Karl and everybody, thank you for joining us today. It's been an absolute joy. Do you want to do that additional plug? Like we are starting to do these AI trainings built around a lot of what you're seeing here. So if you're interested, reach out to Channing at irrationallabs.com or frankly, any of us, friend any of us on LinkedIn. We're all very friendly. But we do hope this was exciting for you. If you're on our mailing list, you will get all the survival guides for AI, you know, going forward in the future. So it was a joy to be with you all today. We will have more events next month. Follow us on LinkedIn, follow us on the emails, be our friends. And we look forward to continuing the discussion here and in other places. So thanks for your time, energy, and genius today. And just know this was not a hallucination. It was a dream. It was a dream lecture by the great Karl Purcell. So thank you so much, everybody, for your time and energy. Have a good one.
Thanks, everybody.